It's kind of crazy when you think about it. In the world we live in today, a new virus can hop on a plane and travel from a tiny village to a huge city in, less than 24 hours? So, yeah, when we first hear whispers about some strange new illness, it's natural to feel a little anxious. But here's the thing. Behind the scenes, the experts aren't panicking. They have a plan. So let's pull back the curtain and take a look inside that public health playbook.
And that's the big question, right? A mysterious illness pops up. The clock is officially ticking. You've got very little information, tons of pressure, so what do public health officials actually do in those first critical 48 hours to make the right call?
Well, here's the most important part. They don't guess. There are no gut feelings involved here. Instead, they turn to this really structured, systematic process that's designed to bring some order to all that chaos. It's a playbook for figuring out risk, and it all gets going within that first day or two.
So, what do they call this thing? It's known as a rapid risk assessment. And believe me, it is the absolute core of any modern public health response. Okay, so here's the formal definition. The two phrases that really jump out are structured process and limited information. This whole thing is built for speed and for being thorough, helping experts get a handle on a threat long before they have all the pieces of the puzzle.
And what makes this so much better than just a panicked reaction are these principles right here. It has to be transparent, so anyone can look at the data and follow the logic. It's reproducible, meaning other experts can run the same process and see if they get the same results. And it's flexible, right? It can adapt as new info comes in, but it's also really honest about what they don't know yet. All right, so once they've got those ground rules set, the next phase kicks off. And this is where the real detective work starts. I'm talking about systematically gathering clues from every possible source. Now, this isn't just some frantic Google search. It's a very clear 5-stage process. First, they prepare. Then they start collecting the basic info on the event itself. The who, what, where. After that, they do a deep dive into the background of the disease. Pull out only what's relevant. And then, and this is super important, they grade the quality of every single piece of evidence. A huge piece of this investigation has this kind of cool name, epidemic intelligence. Think of this as the engine that's constantly scanning for signals. It sifts through everything from official government reports to media rumors, all to detect a potential threat and, crucially, to verify if it's the real deal. So where's all this intelligence coming from? Well, it's mostly two places. On one hand, you have the published literature. This is the gold standard, the peer-reviewed science. But on the other hand, you've got what's called gray literature. This is the real-time stuff, like outbreak reports from the field and raw data from surveillance systems. You absolutely need both. And this is where it gets really smart, because not all information is created equal. The team actually grades the quality of every piece of evidence. A big, systematic review, that's graded good, because it's super rigorous. But a single report about one patient, while it's still useful, it's graded unsatisfactory, because, it's just one data point. This grading system makes sure the final assessment is built on the strongest foundation possible. Okay, so they've gathered all this info, they've graded it, now what? Well, now we get to the analytical heart of the whole process, and it all comes down to weighing two critical factors. Think of risk as a coin with two sides. On one side, you've got probability. Basically, how likely is this thing to spread? Is it airborne? Are people immune to it? On the other side, you've got impact. If you do get sick, how bad is it going to be? We're talking about how severe it is, the death rate, and whether we have any way to treat it. And this leads to this incredibly simple but powerful little formula. Risk equals probability times impact. See, it's not just about how deadly a disease is or how contagious it is. It's the product of both. A virus that spreads like wildfire but just gives you a mild fever has a high probability but a low impact. On the flip side, a really lethal virus that's super hard to catch has a low probability but a terrifyingly high impact. The real risk is where those two things meet. So you take those two factors, you plug them into that formula, and that brings us to the final stage, combining them to deliver a clear, actionable verdict on just how big the risk is. This is the risk matrix, and it's where everything comes together. You can see it right here. They plot probability on one axis and impact on the other. So a disease with a high probability of spreading, but a pretty low impact, like, say, a common cold, that lands in the moderate risk bucket. But a disease with both a high probability of spreading and a high impact, well, that shoots right into the red zone, very high risk. So after all that investigation,
all that analysis. The whole complicated situation gets distilled down into just 5 clear levels: very low, low, moderate, high, or very high. And that one final assessment is what guides the entire public health response from that moment forward. This quote from the ECDC, the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, really sums it all up. The goal isn't to be perfect. That's impossible. The goal is to provide a clear estimate using a structured, transparent method, especially when you're short on time and the stakes couldn't be higher. So why does any of this matter? Because everything that happens next hinges on this assessment. It's what tells officials if they even need to respond. It guides how fast and how big that response should be. It helps them pick the right tools like quarantines, and it shapes how they communicate with all of us. It literally turns chaos into a prioritized action plan. So the next time you see that alarming headline about a mystery disease, just remember this playbook. Remember that behind all the uncertainty, there's a systematic, evidence-based process working away. A process designed to protect all of us by turning raw information into real understanding and then turning that understanding into action.